My name's Belinda Thompson. I'm a mental health social worker. I've been working in the social work field for around about 30 years. And for the last 15 years I've been working for Evolve Therapeutic Services, which is a mental health service for children in the child protection system. About Your Brilliant Brain, which is a book that I wrote a couple of years ago. The beginnings of the book were with a young person I was working with. She was in foster care, and her teacher asked me, after explaining the brain to her teacher asked me if I had any resources that could be useful for children, particularly the children in her class, to help explain what happens in the brain when you have a poor early start in life. So I went looking and couldn't find any resources. So in the end I decided to write it myself. I wrote the book particularly for foster carers, to be able to read the book to children in their care, to help them understand what might be happening in their brains and their bodies when they haven't had the healthy beginnings that children in intact families usually have. A couple of years ago I made the book into a PowerPoint, and I used the PowerPoint with foster carers, and then I applied for a mental health grant and was able to have the book published. So I went to an independent publisher and they organised an editor to look at the book as well too. So I was very lucky to have a great publisher who helped so much. The book really was originally for quite a narrow audience, and that is children in the child protection system who've had a poor early start and their carers, to help support them in thinking with children. Since the book has been published, it really has started to appeal to a broader audience. And this is because we all have a very similar regulation system. And we use this regulation system when we are frightened or fearful, or when we feel unsafe. When we're born, this system is fairly rudimentary and gives us the ability to fight, flight or freeze. As we develop, this system develops also, and it starts to develop in a way that can really distinguish what is frightening and scary from other events in our lives that might appear to be a little bit frightening and scaring, but in actual fact aren't. So all children need some help and support from safe adults around them to develop their regulation system. And this is done in a couple of fairly universal ways. One is connection with safe adults. Another one is practicing calming activities, and often in healthy families with healthy children we practice calming activities in the games and other activities that we play with them. And the other way that we develop this regulation system is to have safe adults around us who help us make sense of our experiences and help us use our fight, flight, freeze system in a way that is not unsafe to others around us. So these basics can be applied early in life, or they can be applied later in life too. And for children in the foster care system, often it's when they come into the system and come into a new family environment that they're able to connect with the safe adults around them, practice some of these calming activities, and have that safe adult make sense of their experience with them. So I decided to use animals to think about these concepts with children. I needed them to be fairly simple concepts, and I wanted the animals to be quite friendly and kind in appearance. I'm not the only one who's used animals to think about the brain and how the brain helps us regulate. But in some other models, some of the animals are a little frightening or threatening. Say, for example, the use of a guard dog. So I wanted children to be able to make friends with the animals and to be able to make use of the important messages. Particularly with the meerkat, I wanted the meerkat to be fun and inquisitive, but for children to be able to make friends with their meerkat. I also wanted really simple text and illustrations, and the illustrator Natasha Chow really helped bring the book to life with her simple illustrations. I also wanted to have some subtle messages in the book for adults reading the book too, both caring adults who are sharing this with children, but also adults who perhaps might have had a poor early start themselves and want to use some of the concepts in the book. And those subtle messages come through in the colours. So each animal has a colour, and the owl has all of the colours on her coat, but loses some of the colours when she goes to sleep. So I just want to talk just a tiny bit about the links to mental health and well-being for children. The research is telling us really clearly that to have good mental health and well-being throughout your lifespan, you really need to have safe, supportive adults around you when you're little. If that doesn't happen, then it can happen later in life, but it is slightly harder. More support and more repetitions of the calming activities are needed. We know that there are lots of influences on mental health and well-being issues. Influences such as genetics, epigenetics and your DNA. Other environmental factors such as the culture that you're brought into, and multi-generational cultural factors, as well as your early life experience, which I've already talked about. But we know that we can support the foundations for good mental health by helping parents and carers to be good enough with their children, and that is to meet their children's emotional needs around about 20 to 30% of the time. And for children with an abuse and neglect background, we need carers to perhaps be a little more attuned and to be more helpful and supportive in helping children with their regulation system. And that's where the activities in the book come into play.